In just over 20 minutes here on One, highlights of today's vital World Cup qualifying match played at Wembley between England and Poland in World Cup Match of the Day. Now, with an extended edition of today's main news and sport, Michael Burke.
There's been mass killing in Peking. Thousands of troops have opened fire on the demonstrators occupying the city centre. At least 40 have been killed, as many as 1,000 injured. As dawn breaks now over Peking, the firing, the fighting and the killing is still going on. Good evening. Thousands of Chinese troops have opened fire on demonstrators who've been occupying the centre of Peking for weeks. The fighting has been going on now for 7 hours. It's impossible to tell how many have been killed, at least 42 we know of, and maybe more than 1,000 injured. It was 1 in the morning Peking time when long columns of heavily armed troops with tanks and armoured carriers converged on the demonstrators in Tiananmen Square. The radio told people to stay indoors to save their lives, but they didn't. They poured onto the streets, and this time the troops opened fire. In places, the soldiers smashed their way through. Elsewhere, the demonstrators held them back with barricades, bricks and Molotov cocktails. Some soldiers are reported to have been lynched. The hospitals have been swamped with dead and injured. Within the last few minutes, tanks have been reported moving into the square, and artillery and machine gun fire have been heard in the suburbs. Our correspondent Kate Adey reports from the bloody streets of Peking.
In the main road east of the square, people are gathered in total raging defiance of the line of soldiers 300 yards away. The troops have fired on them unremittingly. I've seen scores of people injured and several killed. In a hospital I visited earlier, there have been over 150 casualties in the first hour and a half. Fires are burning in many of the roads, army trucks set alight, and there is gunfire from over a wide area. As I came away from the square a short while ago, there was a huge volley of shots. Hundreds of people fled in panic. A man was shot and fell dead 2 feet in front of me. I fell over him. 2 more people died a couple of yards away, and another couple were lying injured and screaming. Even so, there are still thousands of people out on the streets, screaming at the troops, fascists, down with the government, stop the killing. Kate Adey, BBC News, Peking.
Another of our correspondents, John Simpson, has spent all night at a vantage point overlooking Tiananmen Square, watching the troops fighting their way into the heart of the city.
From where I am, the part of Tiananmen Square which I can see has been entirely cleared of demonstrators, though a short while ago there were still students at the base of the monument in the center of the square, defiantly waiting for the army to move against them. They've announced they'll stay there till they die. 8 bodies are visible lying in the square. There's been firing into the square from the Great Hall of the People, and one estimate says that 100 demonstrators have been killed. The job of clearing the square was carried out by troops and paramilitary police who had massed inside the gates of the Forbidden City and charged out into the crowd. Since then, the troops have pushed the demonstrators progressively farther along the main avenue that crosses the square, and at 7:12 London time this evening, there was a sustained burst of fire into the crowd below us, which seems to have caused considerable casualties. For quite some time, there was screaming for people who had been injured, mixed with the wailing of sirens from the ambulances picking up the casualties. One person standing on a balcony in the hotel where I am at present was hit by gunfire. Earlier, before the crowd was cleared, I watched as the demonstrators attacked a tank which drove through the square. It was set alight by Molotov cocktails, but managed to escape. An armoured personnel carrier wasn't so lucky. The soldiers inside jumped out when it was set alight and were savagely attacked by the crowd. An attempt by other demonstrators to rescue one of the soldiers by bringing up a bus to take him away wasn't successful. More demonstrators swarmed on by another door and started attacking him once again. John Simpson, BBC News, Peking.
Next week, Donald Reeves will be making sense of Jesus. Now, before This Is the Day, a special news report, which is with Moira Stewart.
Good morning. The headlines. Hundreds are now thought to have been killed in the crushing of the students' revolt in central Peking. One report on Peking radio, unconfirmed elsewhere, has put the death toll in the thousands. And in Iran, the spiritual and political leader Ayatollah Khomeini has died.